A very good morning to you once again, Lagos, Nigeria, and the entire world. Wherever it is that you are tuned in and listening to us from, this is Smooth 98.1, your love music, love live station. It is 32 minutes past 7 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Cool weather we're having at this point in time. Hope it's being treating you absolutely nicely. My name is Ayokunmi, and we're getting set to take a walk into the world of the papers, the headlines, the big stories making the rounds. This is Freshly Pressed. Another interactive session is coming your way for the next half hour or thereabouts. You get to take a listen to the stories, analysis will follow, and of course, we get to take your thoughts, your messages, your opinions, your perspectives. We love to hear from you always, and you can do that by sending those messages into us on WhatsApp. The number remains 0809 444 0981. That's 0809 444 0981. Also, keep up with us on YouTube. We're streaming live right there at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos, if that is your preferred mode of keeping up with the show. You can leave your comments in the chat box there. I'll take them with the WhatsApp messages as things kick on. Joining me to take a look at the stories, give their analysis, and do an explainer, if I can put it that way. Mr. C and Gbubemi are with me this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. C. Good morning to you, Gbubemi.
Good morning, Ayokunmi. Good morning, Mr. C. Good morning, Lagos. Good to be on the show today.
Good morning, Naya. Good morning, Gbubemi. Good morning, Lagos.
Alrighty. And with that, let's get right into the stories this morning, Mr. C. We're going to begin with this particular one. It's coming out of let me see here, the Daily Trust newspaper. It's all about the governor of Borno State, Babagana Zulum. He has been talking. Now, he says that he has accused, let me put it the way it was written in the story, he has accused some military officers and politicians of being informants and collaborators for Boko Haram terrorists. Now, speaking in an interview on News Central's Breakfast Central, Zulum vowed to deal ruthlessly with saboteurs, frustrating the efforts of his administration in tackling insurgency in the states. He also said that his administration would strengthen its intelligence network to overcome terrorists and their saboteurs. This, Mr. C, this sounds like something that we've heard regularly over time. Oh, it's people who are, in high places who are informants, who are supporting, who are backing these terrorists. Now, the governor of Borno State has echoed this again. I know this is a two-part story. He said some other things concerning the insurgency in that part of the north. But just walk us through this one as we move on into the second part of this story.
Okay, I think what I'll do, to help you, is I'll just take the two stories together. Now, you're right. Governor Zulum has mentioned something we've heard over and over again. Remember, as far back as the administration of President Goodluck Jonathan, he came out to say that there were Boko Haram sympathizers and supporters within his government. He was widely lampooned at the time by members of the opposition, who incidentally are now in government. And it has continued down the line. Remember, we've been dealing with this Boko Haram menace for at least 15 years, and there's no sign it's about to end anytime soon, despite the many reassurances of the various security chiefs from about 2010 to date. Now, Governor Zulum is feeling the heat because he's the governor in the state. He is on the ground. He's one of the few governors that does not reside in Abuja throughout the year. He actually stays in the state. Now, because of the Boko Haram conflict, because of the activities of non-state terrorists, it is extremely difficult for him to attempt to grow the economy of Borno State, because really and truly, you'd have to be extremely ludicrous and ridiculous to suggest to a foreign investor, come and invest in Borno State with all the news flying around. Because one of the things any sane foreign investor would want guaranteed is security. Now, he says he's strengthening his intelligence network, which is commendable. It's a step in the right direction. and he's punished to deal with saboteurs. Now, that's where I would like to take a pause on his behalf. Where he discovers that some of these saboteurs are not within Borno State, are not within his jurisdiction, or within the circle that he can directly punish or get punished, what are his plans? Because whether we like it or not, it is safe to assume that some of these sympathizers, some of these supporters of these non-state terrorist actors actually reside, work in Abuja, and are close to the corridors of power. So he's also made it clear that kinetic measures alone, which include the use of the army and force, will not resolve this conflict. And it tallies and aligns perfectly with what we've been saying on the show for years, that the real cause of all of this conflict is economic. And once you sort out the economic angle, you sort out the education angle, a lot of this conflict will disappear.
Right.
Along with dealing with the politicians and the sympathizers that are aiding and abetting this conflict. Now, he's also advocated for non-kinetic measures, including improving the economy, education, and he also made reference to Operation Safe Corridor. Now, this is the controversial program, or the program that has been questioned in some quarters, that supposedly rehabilitates former Boko Haram members and then returns them back into society. And the governor is finally admitting what we've also mentioned repeatedly on the show. How are we certain all of these guys who claim to be repentant actually repentant? And the governor says, look, guys, listen, I cannot vouch for all of them. Some of them will return back to armed conflicts. So yes, we know that rehabilitation has been used in a number of countries across the world, but here, how can we determine, how can we establish that they're doing the right thing, that the conversion process is complete and that there is no chance they will fall back into crime? Yes.
That is a big question. I was just going to ask you, Mr. C. I mean, going back to the beginning of the story, where it says that the governor has accused some military officers and politicians of being informants and collaborators for these terrorists. Now, at this point in time, where the governor finds himself, where Borno State actually finds itself, does the governor have much to lose or anything else to lose if he decides to say, you know what, this person, that person? Because if you say some military officers, some politicians, I want to assume or believe that he knows things, he knows certain things to a degree, as opposed to just saying, oh, some politicians, some military officers, which is very vague. At this point in time, where things are, does he have anything to lose if he decides, you know what, let me just scatter this table and let's know where we're going to?
Okay, so the truth is, he has nothing to lose. He's a second-term governor, but the bigger question here is there a political will to prosecute these guys from Abuja? Remember a few years back, I think it was one of the Arab countries, that was it Qatar? Yeah, they sent us a list of terrorist financiers.
UAE, if I remember, I think it was
UAE,
UAE.
okay, it was the
Yeah,
UAE.
UAE.
Yeah, about 400 plus strong list. As you and I speak this morning, Ayo, can you confidently say what has been done with that list? We were told under the last administration a trial has started. Nobody knows where that trial is, whether it's been concluded, whether it's been struck out, whether it's continuing. Nobody knows the exact status update of that arrangement. So it begs the question, even if he names them, then what? Remember that where they're military officers, because they are military officers, they're subject to army law, meaning a court martial should be set up to investigate. Now, in the event a court martial is set up and they're found innocent, where do we go from there? Take it also for the politicians. Is there any serious political will to end this Boko Haram and the insurgency by non-state terrorist actors beyond the usual media sound bites and token gestures? Frankly speaking, I'm yet to see any serious political will. It would appear some people somewhere are profiting from the continuing insurgency. And it's really sad because hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Nigerians have their lives adversely impacted, either through the loss of loved ones or being displaced from their homes.
Rather unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in. Thank you for actually answering that question, Mr. C. It's been on my mind ever since I came across this story and I was putting it together. All right, let me come over to you. We're going to discuss a couple of things that have to do with education. It seems like you are our de facto education person this morning. So bear with me on this one. I'm going to head into The Guardian. And this one says, the Nigerian Education Loan Fund, NEL Fund, has called on the University of Lagos to refund students who pay their fees before receiving their loan disbursements from the fund. Now, Managing Director Akitunde Sawyer, represented by NELFund's Director of Strategic Communications, Oshayemi Oluwatui, made the request during a sensitization meeting with UNILAG students. Now, he emphasized the need to address complaints from beneficiaries who initially paid out of pocket before NELFund payments were processed. Now, he further reminded universities nationwide not to bar students from academic activities due to unpaid fees if the students have applied and been verified under the loan scheme. We've talked about this issue of NEL fund a number of times, Gbubemi, and I mean, we're having students who should I say, registered for the scheme and they still have to pay out of pocket, and then the monies came through, and now NEL fund says, hey, these students registered for the scheme. We've paid the monies. You need to give them their monies back. How is all this going to be worked out?
Okay, first and foremost, I just need to state that it sometimes sounds a bit misleading when we say fees because, quote and unquote, students of federal universities do not pay fees, tuition fees, but there are charges that each institution levies on students to pay. So things like examination fee, accommodation fee, laboratory fee, ID card, student handbook, quite a host of things like that. So it's not really tuition fees, it's just all those other charges. Now, this is a situation we've seen not just with UNILAG, but with some other universities as well. I know that at least twice or thrice this year, NEL Fund has called out some universities that have gone ahead to even accept payments from students when they knew that the students were processing their loans. My opinion is that there's some sort of handshake problem between NEL Fund and universities, or most likely that universities, would rather prefer to receive the funds first, irrespective of whether the students have been applied and, their applications have been verified and booked for the loans, which shouldn't be. But the university has gone ahead to clarify, though, that they have actually started paying some of those students back the monies they had paid, but there has been a backlog due to some issues with verifying registration and payments from the students. However, on the wider issue,
it shouldn't be that difficult. It should not be that difficult to verify and so on and so forth.
Exactly. That's why I said, there appears to be some sort of handshake issue between NEL Fund and the universities. Ideally, what NEL Fund is saying is that once the students have applied and once the applications have been verified and the loans have been booked, this institution should not collect fees from those students, and the institution should not threaten them with non-acceptance into the universities for that year, because NEL Fund will definitely commit to paying that loan. So, like I said, so I'm not quite sure what exactly the issue is with NEL Fund and the university at this point in time regarding that. So the university also argued, though, that it might have been because of a misunderstanding regarding their start dates. But irrespective, my opinion is NEL Fund has a portal that the universities have access to, the students have access to. So this university should be able to determine when students' loans have been verified and will be paid, have been booked for payment.
Right.
So hopefully, this is something that we should hear less and less of. But this is just one institution. There are over 100 other institutions across the country as well. Potentially this is probably what they're also facing. So, whatever the process is, we discussed this process a few weeks ago as well. The process needs to be streamlined, and made clear to all parties, the students, NEL Fund, and universities, and everybody needs to follow the process as it is. If NELFON
Definitely.
has already committed to advancing those loans on behalf of the students, then the university should not have to charge the students to pay, and in many cases, if a student is applying for a loan, it most likely means that they don't even have that money in the first place. So if the university is harassing them to pay, that means they have to go and look for that money to pay. And then the universities will, finalize with NELFON and then potentially refund, which should not be the case. So for me, this sounds more like a process problem. And, between NELFON and the universities, they need to be
Right,
able to
right,
iron
right.
out the processes properly.
Right. Mr. C, let me just ask you this before we move on to the next story. I mean, talking about this particular process, as we said, processes. If a student, applies for a loan and then goes to school and says, "Oh, I've applied for this loan and all that." Now, applying for a loan doesn't always guarantee that that particular student will meet all the criteria necessary for the loan to actually be disbursed. So, I mean, how is that bridge then? So how is that gap then bridged in terms of, "Oh, I applied for the loan, so please." I'm going to continue my studies and so on and so forth. What then happens in a situation where maybe the loan is not, should I say, approved? I mean, how do we deal with these little issues here and there?
Okay,
Let me just
so
quick.
okay.
Okay.
No,
I just
Gbubemi,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
just quickly jump in and clarify. Yeah, so now what NELFund is saying is that once they have verified the application and confirmed that the loans have been disbursed, so that process has to happen before, the university can be guaranteed that the NELFund will pay the charges for that student.
Okay, so I agree with what Gbubemi has said, and I think we can liken it to what happens with the health insurance scheme. When you pull up to any hospital, you give them your health insurance card, right? And then they
Right.
verify with the health insurer you're signed up to that they're going to pay for the consultation you come for, the treatment, or the drugs you're going to buy. So once that process back end is sorted out, you'll be attended to. So I think that it's the same model, it's the same understanding that would drive this.
Hmm. All right. Thank you for sharing those thoughts there. Mr. C, let us get back into the nitty-gritty of the conversation this morning. And we're heading into the punch. Interesting one when I actually saw this, and I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or have a mix of both of them. Anyways, like I said, in the Punch newspaper, the senator representing Ebonyi North Senatorial District, that's Onyekachi Nweboye, has called for the relocation of old buildings in the community around the Abuja International Airport. Now, he made this call in a now trending video during the last plenary on Thursday. The Deputy Senate Chief Whip said he wanted the vicinity around the airport to witness a total infrastructural transformation that is going on in the Federal Capital Territory by the minister, Nyesom Wike, with the approval of his colleagues. Now, he said, and I partially quote here, "I want the FCT minister to extend his development of the FCT within the surroundings of Abuja Airport. If you are descending into the airports, the type of infrastructure within the environs does not represent a good image of Nigeria." And I think that FCC minister should capture that in his next budget to either relocate the habitats or renew the area, because the buildings in the community are the mirror of the country. End of partial quote. Seems like Senator Nweboye is a very aesthetically inclined individual. I mean, that's what bothers him the most in the grand scheme of things.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ayo. Now, for the benefit of our listeners, this is the same individual who was involved in the verbal altercation with Mrs. Obias Ekwesili during the Senate hearing over the suspended Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. The same individual. Now, it's interesting that he brings this sort of bill and presents it before the hallowed chambers of the Senate. There is an airport in his state that is not functioning, is not operational. It has never crossed his soul or his mind to have that addressed so that the state can benefit from it. He's concerned with how certain buildings look when landing in Abuja. That is his primary concern. And thankfully and fortunately, the Senate shut down this bill immediately. Again, it calls into question, what are some of these senators doing in the red chamber? They don't seem to understand why they're there. And you would think that sometime next week, I believe, the third term of this current arrangement starts. The third year of this
Third
current
year.
arrangement starts, yeah. If we do a check of this particular individual and all individuals like him, you will find that they've not really done anything meaningful in the Senate. Why are you concerned about the buildings and the people around the airport? Are they on the airport land? No. You want them relocated. At whose expense? Relocated to where? And then when you acquire the land, what are you using the land for? Because if you have unoccupied land, it then becomes a security risk. Not too far back, some years back, we had instances of planes being robbed on the tarmac in Nigeria. So again, this is a clarion call to them, not that they will heed it, but to those who will listen, those who can hear, let's be serious. Let's do serious things. We have enough pertinent issues to address, to deal with, and not this. So I'm not surprised that he's in the news again. It would seem that when you hear his name, just expect certain type of news. Next story, please.
Well, maybe the senator has a passion for interior decoration or landscaping or something, because I'm trying to, grapple with what exactly he's trying to do here. Let me take a couple of messages before we get back into the stories. Ajayi Oloniwa says, Governor Zulum's vow to deal ruthlessly with saboteurs in the fight against terrorists is like a broken record, even as he continues to support the rehabilitation of the so-called repentant terrorists. There's nothing like repentant terrorists. Well, I mean, he did say that he cannot vouch for the program 100%. He also did say that. So I don't know where exactly he stands at this point in time. Gilbert Musa in Festac says, on the recent statement from the current governor of Borno State, on the overwhelming presence and stronghold of Boko Haram insurgents have over the states, if we can remember, the current Vice President, Mr. Shatima, equally acknowledged the same stance Governor Zulum asserted when he was governor of the same states. The question is, what are the current security chiefs in the Army, the Navy, and Air Force doing about it since 2010? Our security operatives can seek solutions from the developed world on effective models to combat insurgency. We'd rather worry about how landing at the airport actually looks like. That seems to be more important than dealing with that problem. Babatunde Alao says, as far as I'm concerned, Nel Fund is more like a bursary and the repayment is almost impossible, noting the level of unemployment and unavailability of data systems in Nigeria. The idea is good, but trust me, we love to tell stories after this administration. All right, let me come back to you right now, baby. Let's talk about JAM. Never far from the news in the last couple of days or thereabouts. I was supposed to release some results yesterday. I haven't seen news on that one. But anyways, Professor Ishak Oloyede, the Registrar of the Joint Administrations and Matriculation Board, JAM, has responded strongly to critics calling for his resignation following the challenges during the 2025 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination. That's the UTME. Now, speaking during a meeting with key stakeholders, including chief external examiners and civil society organizations in Abuja, Oloyede dismissed the calls for his resignation, stating that those criticizing his leadership lack the qualifications to question his stewardship. And he said, and I quote, truck pushers cannot direct pilots, he said in a reference to critics, whom he believes are unqualified to advise on matters of education. Let me leave the quote there. It seems like as long as I'm not in that particular space, I cannot I have no right or no standing to call out anything that I see that doesn't seem to be working within that space, according to what he has said. But anyways, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so first and foremost, for me, this is a high power distance issue problem, which is prevalent in our parts of the world, Africa, Southeast Asia, where people at the top do not expect people that they do not consider to be their equals to challenge whatever it is they say or do. As far as I'm concerned, this, the JAM registrar should not even be uttering all these sort of statements. He should remain penitent for the next 1 year. if he has not come to the realization that he should resign, or has not come to the realization of the facts that would encourage people to call for his resignation, then maybe he needs to go back and, and reflect about this issue. Now, it just so happened that we've had this issue happen this year. But, like we discussed last week and a couple of weeks before that as well, the JAMB situation isn't just a this year issue. The atrocious results have been from previous years. Nobody said anything. Now it's all blown up this year, and a lot of people have asked so many questions. So, for example, people have said, "Oh, it's a CBT exam. If it's a CBT exam, why can't I get my results immediately?" For example, we haven't even come to that at all. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of ethnic coloration around this issue. I can't speak to that. It remains to be substantiated. But this is what will happen when people haven't exactly really done their job. So he's come out and he said, "Oh, it was what was that thing that he said? Human error or something,
Correct.
And
right.
Yeah, and he expects us as usual to quote unquote manage it like that, because in Nigeria, that's exactly what we do. When bad things happen, we don't try and find out how to ensure that, we follow proper processes, where there are consequences for actions, those consequences are meted out. No, we just say, let's move on. Yes, let's forgive him, let's forgive her, let's manage things like that. Yes, there are remedial actions that we can take, blah, blah, blah. But who knows, for example, whether we won't have a repeat of this situation next year? It may not be in this exact same circumstance. It could be something, related to this. Who says, and like I
Next
said,
year.
This is next year, sorry.
Next
And
year is
like I
far.
said,
What's the guarantee that something like this won't happen even in the
with the
remedial
receipts,
the receipts that have been planned and been done?
exactly. Exactly. And one thing I keep on harping about is that this issue isn't just this year. This issue has been for previous years coming, and it just blew up this year. And for me, if it didn't come to him to resign, then people that appointed him maybe should have considered terminating his employment, because it's a grievous issue.
Right.
And now,
Right.
it seems like they're trying to cut corners everywhere. Oh, okay, so some people weren't able to make the receipts. We're going to also have another exam for them. Those who missed it the first time, we're also going to have there's a lot of patch getting involved. And for me, we wouldn't have come to this point if people had done the work that they should have done. So again, like I said, this is not the point where you should come and be raising shoulders for us and be telling us that truck pushers cannot direct pilots. This is the point where he should be apologizing 247 at every point in time. Keep apologizing until we get tired of his apologies.
Mr. C, before we leave this, time has flown by, but I just need to get your thoughts on this. Right? Is this a classic case of, okay, I made a mistake and I've cried, I've begged. What more do you want from me? From me, you want to kill me? Leave me alone. Seems like a classic case of that, where it should not be happening.
No, exactly. So it's symptomatic of Nigeria and its anyhowness. Do what you want to do, and then just belt out a sorry. And once you belt out a sorry, everything prior to the sorry must be not only forgiven, but forgotten. Now, this is the same man who came out to cry. And I called him out and I said they were crocodile tears. And I've been proven right. You compare your critics to truck pushers, not a problem. It's not his fault. It's the person who appointed him. I'm not sure he's back from Rome. So many questions, but clearly it begs the question, how do we select people into public offices if this is the sort of attitude they display? Because in any serious country, he would not be in office. I rest my case.
All right, let me take the rest of your messages as we wrap up this morning. Ade in Lagos says, it's sad what happened to the army in their base last week. Abacha said, if an insurgency lasts 24 hours, the government knows about it. Look at the insecurity in the land. If you protest, the government will quickly send the police, army, and so on and so forth to stop your protest. Whereas you have bandits and herdsmen killing people in Plateau, Ebonyi, Edo, and so on and so forth. You can't see such security to protect the people. That means the government is complicit in what is going on. Doesn't have the political will because of the 2027 elections and all that. All right, thank you, Eddie. Tony Marimbi says, unfortunately, Governor Zulum appears to be Nigeria's version of Zelensky, fighting wars throughout his regime. Zulum is only corroborating what former President Jonathan and others have said about. But the question now is, what is the commander-in-chief doing about it? How else would a wanted terrorist have the audacity to go to the federal capital to process documents for pilgrimage, except that he knows those behind him? I'm sure as we speak, some highly placed persons are negotiating or pushing for his release. And if we're truly ready to end the malady, that's where the arrest of sponsors and investigation begins. I'm sure the forever hidden list of 400 must have grown to 1,200. So sad and shameful. God save our land. Amen to that. Michael says, I find it funny that bandits who have killed hundreds, maimed and looted can be forgiven and rehabilitated, while armed robbery is punishable by death. What exactly does the law say about banditry and terrorism? Okay, Shagun from Festac says, good morning, great men. Good morning to you too, Shagun. This jam, my son's result was not released and not rescheduled to reseat the exam. Well, these are the issues that we're talking about. And someone says, we don't have the standing to actually question his office or whatever. Nigeria, which way? Anyways, we need to call it a morning on the show Freshly Pressed. Thank you all so much for tuning in, for sending your messages, and always keeping it locked right here on Smooth 98.1. Big thank you to you, Mr. C, and of course to you for always being a part of the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Ayo. Thank you, Gbubemi. And Lagos, Nigeria, let's just do what we have to do. Cheers.
All right, let's do what we have to do. Make it an amazing Thursday. Thank you so much once again. And of course, Lagos, Nigeria, the entire world. Don't go anywhere. Keep it tuned to Smooth 98.1 and the Smooth Breakfast. You know what it is, 8:15 on a Thursday morning. It's all about entertainment just in the grapevine.